Raymond Loy is the professor of management at the Department of Management and Marketing of University of Macau. He received his PhD in management from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. His research interests include organizational justice, leadership, workplace exchange relationship, and international human resource management. Raymond has conducted field research in various industries in Macau, Hong Kong, mainland China, and the United States. His research has appeared in the field's major journals such as Academy of Management Journal, Journal of Applied Psychology, and Journal of Organizational Behavior. He serves as the associate editor of Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology and Journal of Managerial Psychology. In addition to his research accomplishments, Raymond teaches courses related to human resource management and organizational behavior at undergraduate and PhD levels. And now, Professor Loy will talk about the role of organizational culture in hospitality industry. Please, Professor.
Thank you, Alice. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Alice, for inviting me to have a chance to share with you on the topic of organizational culture. Okay, so before we go into some in-depth discussion about this topic, I would like to give a very brief introduction or some fundamentals related to organizational culture. Before giving you a definition of organizational culture, let's have a look on some of the mottos that you can find in the websites on some famous hotels. For example, in Ritz-Carlton, you'll find their mottos are, "We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen." In Marriott, "Take care of associates and they will take care of the customers." In Hilton, there are 6 words which go to the full form of Hilton, including hospitality, integrity, leadership, teamwork, ownership, now. Okay, so from these motto, in fact, they reflect the core values of this hotel in running their business. In every organization or every hotel, there prevail some norms and values that govern the behaviors of the employees and stakeholders. In general, we call this organizational culture. So what is an organizational culture? By definition, organizational culture includes everything. It comprises of values, beliefs, language, assumptions, code of behaviors, practice, procedures, rituals, etc. So someone may say that when you work in an organization, organizational culture is like the air. You can breathe it, you can sense it. Most importantly, these elements should be shared among organizational members if a company possesses a very strong organizational culture, which means if some of the values, belief is just individual, not shared by others, it does not belong to organizational culture. Take language as example. In the motto you just found for Ritz-Carlton, "Ladies and gentlemen" is well understood by the staff of Ritz-Carlton as representing the service commitment to their guests. So, how does organizational culture emerge? Where is organization culture comes from? Usually, it's the founder's value that determine the organizational culture. So organizational culture mostly reflects the personal value of the founders who wants the employees to share and how they should be behaved. For example, the founders of Marriott, the J.W. Marriott Hotel, began his business with a root beer stand with a philosophy of providing good food and good service at a fair price. So it becomes the guiding principle of Marriott to provide superior customer service and putting people first. So the founder's value become the company's value and become the organizational culture. The second source of culture may comes from the history of the organization. So no matter how long your organization exists, there should be history. So the history of the organization usually shapes the organizational culture that they have. If you go to the website of Hilton, you read the history of the group. So you will find the group have a lot of achievement mentions, like they have the first hotel to have the TV in the guest room, which is mentioned in 1947. And also, they are the first hotel to introduce the multi-hotel reservation system. And they have the first airport hotel concept. Now, those happened in 40s and 50s. But from this history, you will have a strong sense that the group of Hilton is the first mover of many new initiatives, so which reflect their culture of being the leader in the industry. Now, the third source of organizational culture may come from the senior management's vision and behaviors. So it's not just the founders, but the senior management's vision and mission, they can also trickle down to the whole organization and becomes part of the culture. Now, because as an employee, when you work in an organization, you will closely watch and observe the behaviors of other people, in particular the leader. So if the leader conveys some kind of message, behaviors, which can signal to the staff or employee about the organizational culture, then it becomes part of the organizational culture that the employee absorbs. Finally, is the national culture, which also influences organizational culture. Now, it's typical you go to a Japanese hotel and you will find that the atmosphere or the culture they emphasize is very close to the Japanese national culture. Okay, so it reflects national culture can also form part of the organizational culture. Next, I will talk about what are the functions of organizational culture. So first, of course, if you have a strong organizational culture, it will provide a sharp brand to the outsider or the external stakeholder that differentiate this organization from other company. So when we think about Four Seasons hotels, we will instantly perceive super service, very strong service culture there. So this image coming from the organizational culture already distinguish Four Seasons from other hotels. And more importantly, organizational culture function to provide a sense of identity to the members. So in the workplace, employees, they're looking for an identity. So when they work in the hotel, so Four Seasons, for example, they will try to use the identity as the Four Seasons staff as their own identity so that they can reduce their uncertainty in their daily life. And if they work in a very prestigious hotel, they can also enhance their self-image. So the identity code provided by the organizational culture also makes the hotel employees feel comfortable and commit. So when you have a very strong culture, so it can also generate the members' commitment to the organizational goals. So it facilitates the organizational member to commit to any organizational goal that was put forward by the leaders. And finally, organizational culture provides some behavioral guidelines to organizational members. So how they should behave, what kind of things they can talk, what kind of things they cannot talk. So let them understand what they should do and what they cannot do. So finally, I would like to talk about how to maintain organizational culture. Now, this is very important. In fact, organizational culture has been maintained starting from the recruitment process. So when organization or hotels, they are recruiting new staff, they already choose their staff who have similar personal values to their organizational culture. So we have a famous theory called the attraction, selection, and attrition process. So when organization promote advertisement in the job market, they will sell their image, and part of their image reflect the organizational culture. So if some people like this organizational culture, they think it's fit with their personal value, they will apply for the job. And this is the attraction part. So when the organization do the selection, when they select their staff to become their new employees, they will also check whether the personal value of these staff fit with their organizational culture. And this is the selection part. So finally, if there is some staff, they really cannot think they have a fit culture with the personal value and the organizational culture, they may quit the job finally. And this is the process of attrition. So as a whole, this theory tells us that finally, those people stay in the same organization, they may become more and more homogeneous in their personal value and organizational culture. So the hiring and selection process already have a function to maintain the organizational culture of the organization. And the next is about the reward system. So if your organization or hotel emphasize teamwork, then your reward system will also have a teamwork reward system that match with this kind of culture. So if you use a very competitive, individualistic reward system, then it may not match with the culture. And finally, those people don't fit, they will quit the job. Now, the next or the most important is socialization. So it may start from the onboard new staff orientation or day-to-day routine meeting. For example, in Ritz-Carlton, they have a standing meeting before each work shift called the daily lineup. So it's a very short meeting, around 50 minutes, to meet their staff before they start their work. So these meetings serve three purposes. First is the warm-up. So that means the staff, they need to shift their gear from their daily life back to serve the customer now. And second is the tune-up. So the tune-up process reconnect the staff with the core values of the organization. And finally is the catch-up. So the senior management or the managers can convey some important messages of that day to the staff. So this is a daily line-up meeting they will have. But through this meeting, in fact, it's a kind of socialization process that make the staff to be more committed to the organizational culture and to remember what they should do and what they should not do in the organization. Now, finally, is the communication. So communication happens in, for example, day-to-day communication between supervisor and subordinate, or some feedback communication after some performance, or the annual play show, or if you have a lunch party, or even annual dinner. So it's a kind of communication process. So in all these communication activities, organizational culture can be reinforced and maintained. So these are the basic or fundamental things about organizational culture that I would like to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. And thank you very much. You introduced a very detail about what is organizational culture, its definition, its values, its function. And I want to have some question with you relating to organizational culture.
Okay.
Based on your presentation, we all know that the existing employees who work in the organization for a long time, so they are familiar with the existing culture.
Yeah.
How about for the newcomer, the new employee? Based on your presentation, organization can introduce some of the culture through the hiring and socialization process.
Yes.
In addition to this, what else the organization can teach the new employee, newcomer? That's the culture of the organization.
Okay. I think it all starts when, for example, when you do the interview. Okay, so in the interview process, although you have some selection questions, we try to see whether the knowledge, skill, ability of the staff fit the job. And the next thing is you will also try to understand the personality of the interviewees. So whether the candidates have some value match with your organizational culture. So this is what we call in PO fit or person organization fit. Okay, so this is one of the important part also in the selection process. So it happened usually in the second interview or in the discretionary selections. That means if you go through, you are the final candidates. So before you get the offer letter, some organization, they will introduce one more interview. You meet with the senior staff, and the senior will talk with you not about the job, but maybe about your life, your view on some hot issues, so they can know your personal view, whether it fits with the organizational culture, or they may explain some of the behavior they anticipate the employees in the organization so that the newcomer will have some preparation for that. This is a very important part to in the selection process to find someone who fit with the organizational culture. And after that, of course, is the onboard orientation. So some organizations, they will have quite long or not just 1 or 2 days, maybe a week or 2 weeks. Okay, and some organizations, they will introduce some rotation orientation program. So in that case, the new employees, they have a chance not just reading the handbooks, not just reading the policy and guidelines, and they can observe how people work there. They can observe how people talk. So it is very important for the newcomers so they can understand, okay, what the life will be in this organization. And of course, after probation, so there will be some additional training. So training may be in the areas of KSA, knowledge, skill, and ability, but can also be on the cultural adaptation. Okay, so training is also a very good occasion for the organization to reinforce and transmit their core values. Yeah.
Based on this answer, I learned that person and culture value is very important in this situation, in particular for the newcomer. Okay, Raymond, I have another question. Nowadays, business environment keeps changing and not only competitive in the environment. An organization is affected by many unexpected external factors, for example, political reasons, social, economic, or even crisis. So how can an organizational culture can help to deal with these challenges?
Okay, so this is a very good question. In fact, I will look at this question from 2 aspects. So the first aspect is, for example, if you have some crisis happens in the organization like typhoon or earthquake, so your organization need time or very quickly to recover. And at this kind of occasion, organization culture play a very important role to rebuild the organization or to make some cohesion, maintain the cohesion among the employees. Okay, so if you look at from this aspect, then organization is a very good buffer in order to meet the challenges you just mentioned. However, if there is some, for example, the economic situation or the social situation change, and the leader of the organization or senior management, they think that we need to change the organization culture. So in that case, that will be a very complicated issue. So in that case, organizational culture, if it is a strong organizational culture, may be a hurdle. And you may need more time to do that. And being the change agent as a leader, so firstly, they must let the employees or their members know there's a need for change. Okay, so change of organizational culture is never fast and it's never easy. So the change agent, I mean the leader, must let the members understand that it's inevitable that we need to change in order to survive.
So based on your information, this change must be initiated by the top down, right? From top down level instead of bottom up.
Mostly it will be initiated by the top down, but it should be accepted by all the employees if you really want to have meaningful change. Okay, so some researchers call that a change culture. Okay, but I always think that change culture may not be very persistent. So change is something that is a process rather than a kind of culture. Okay, so after the members or employees, they accept that they are aware that there's a need for change, and then the senior management need to do the second step is to build up the future vision. Okay, so what will the world look like if we change? So let the employees buy in the consequence of change, and then they will try to change the culture they originally maintained, and then you may develop another type of culture that can fit into the challenge.
Okay, you mentioned there is a strong culture. What's the difference between strong and weak culture?
I think mainly is about the level or the extent that employees share that kind of values or meanings. Okay, so you may heard of a term called subculture.
Yes.
Okay, so in the very broad organizational culture, maybe within the department or within some groups, there may be some people, they share different type of language, different kind of values. This is what we call the subculture. So in that case, if they're a very strong culture, I mean, most employee, they will share the core values of the organization and try to meet the organizational goal. So if your organization have many subcultures or many groups of different cultures, then I may conclude that it's not a very strong organizational culture. And when you try to promote some organizational campaign or some behaviors, there may be some diversification, there may be some diversity there, and then there may be different results.
Okay. I have another question, Raymond. For many international brands in hospitality industry, like you mentioned, Four Seasons, there are many international brand company. How can we reinforce the organizational culture consistently among the branches located in different countries?
Okay. So I think the main issue here is you need to know, for example, if you go to another country, so another country may have their own work values. I mean, in the national levels. Okay. So if, for example, you are in a very fast-pacing, competitive culture, but if you go to another country, have a branch there, have a hotel there, but those people, their culture, the national culture is relaxed, and they don't want to have a very competitive mindset. And then, in that case, you need to firstly aware of the distance between your own culture and the national culture there. Okay. And the second thing is you need to let the people there buy in your own culture. And of course, you cannot change sharply from a very slow pace to a very quick pace, or very quick pace to a very slow pace. Okay, so you need to know how you can adjust, and you need to take times. So you need to have some lead time for them to happen. Okay, and of course, if you need to maintain the core culture of your home country, then international training, or you're sending some staff from the host country to the head office for some training, so that they can adapt to the home country's the head office culture, so can get to know more. Okay, so in that case, that will be helpful.
So based on your information, in addition to the organizational culture, we also need to pay attention to the national culture, even in the same hotel brands, but they are located in different countries, right?
Yes, I think so.
So based on this information, how does an organization ensure all hotel branches in different countries effectively deliver the organizational strategic goal?
Now, firstly, the expatriate, I mean, the people who send from the head office to the local branches, they need to be very clear about the head office goal. Okay, so they need to, they also need to be very cultural adaptation, very high level of cultural adaptation, and also they need to know how to transfer this goal to the local goal. Okay, so there may be some adjustment. Maybe, okay, organization goal of the head office is very aggressive, okay, but when you go to the local, you anticipate that, okay, if you put this aggressive goal on the local branch, there may be some hurdles, or there you need time to do that, and then you need to adjust, and you need to discuss with the head office. Okay, so how strategically you try to achieve this goal, but maybe bit by bit, or you break the very big goal into smaller goal and achieve them step by step. Okay, so I think this is the core. And of course, when you talk about how you deliver the organizational goals to the local employees, then I think it also depends on the communication system and also the socialization process you have in your own local branch.
Okay. According to your presentation, you mentioned there are some newcomer to join the organization. We need to select the right candidates through the recruitment selection process. However, nowadays there are many frontline employee, in particular hotel industry. The turnover rate is very high. To manage an international organization, retaining high caliber and talent are very challenging. What does a company do to keep the highly mobile talent work in your company?
Okay, so I think it touched on the motivation issues also. So how you motivate your staff. A lot of companies or hotels, for example, take the example in Macau. Okay, so many hotels, they use extrinsic reward. as a mean in order to retain people.
Extrinsic reward, for example?
For example, the salary, bonus, okay? So, and this is a situation, especially in Macau, and unemployment rate is very low. So people can change job easily, okay? But however, if you still rely on this kind of extrinsic reward, then you will result in a very mobile workforce. So when another hotel, for example, have a salary $500 higher, and then you will move. And when you have your $1,000 more, they will come back. Okay, so I think no hotel want that happens. Okay, so I think another thing is we need to look at the intrinsic reward that we can provide to the talents. Okay, like career development. So if you stay in our hotel, so after 3 years, how your career will be. Okay, and also emotional support and leadership, which is very important also. So whether you can help your staff to solve their problem, in the work problem, and even sometimes family problem. Okay, and another very important thing is how to maintain a fair system. Okay, what I mentioned is the organizational fairness. Okay, so a very interesting thing I like to share with my students is that you look at the situation in Macau. So if you can change jobs so easily and the employment rate is so low, why there are sometimes you saw in the newspaper some company they arrange some protests to the company management.
Yes.
Okay, so if they can change job easily, they don't need to go to protest. So what they're looking for is not just higher salary or higher extrinsic reward. They're looking on fair reward system. So they want a fair reward system exists in the organization, and they have some expectation to the organization also. Okay, so it reflects that employee expectation from an organization or from the hotel is not just the salary bonus they will receive every month, but they want to have career achievement, they want to have a very fair system, and they want to have a very good workplace. Yeah.
So to some of the young generation, those are Generation Z, and they are very young. They are usually goal-oriented, a little bit short, and they are very individualism. How can the company can inspire these young generations through organizational culture?
Okay, so this is a very good question also. I think many senior management, they face this issue.
Yes.
And now I would conclude the work ethics of what you mentioned about Generation Z. Okay, what they're looking for. I think there are certain characteristics of this generation work group. First is they will look at flexibility and autonomy. So they would like the work to be more flexible, not have a lot of rules and regulations, and at the same time, when they want to raise some suggestion, you will take into consideration. Okay, so they want to have that kind of autonomy that they can enjoy in the workplace. Second, it's about I think they are also very outcome oriented, and they are very efficient. So you can see now it's the high tech generation.
Cyber age.
Cyber age. They use social media.
Yes.
They use a lot of apps in order to transmit the message.
Yes.
And they look at efficiency. Okay, so they no longer want to write a very long memo, explain things, or go through a very long procedures. Okay, and also this generation also need work-life balance.
Yes.
Okay, so they don't want to stay just like the workaholics. Okay, or the 60s or 70s. So they will stay long hours in work. So they will enjoy their leisure life, and they may have some separation between work and their own private life. But at the same time, they're also career minded. Okay, so from these kind of characteristics, I will anticipate that if you want to manage this kind of this generation of workers, okay, you can focus on what they need. For example, autonomy. In terms of autonomy, you may give them more chance to express their will, express their suggestion. If they make good suggestion, really, you recognize them in front of public, okay, or recognize them by some, not only by extrinsic way, okay, not only by salary increment, but maybe some, even a very recognition email will do a very good job, okay. And at the same time, you need to communicate with them in how to develop their career. Okay, so you stay in this organization or hotels, you will what your career looks like after several years and how you can develop yourself. Okay, because they want their own autonomies. Okay, so what you can do, not what the management gives you. Okay, what they can do by themselves, by doing more studies, by doing more what we call the citizenship behaviors, in order to develop their trust in the organization, so that they will perceive a kind of support from the organization. So basically, I don't think they have a what you call a strong individualism, but I think they have different focus when compared with the generation like us. Okay. Okay. So, but as a management, if you understand what they need and you try to serve their needs, then that will be, I think that will be a way that you can communicate with this generation.
Okay, the goal is always motivation, right?
Yeah.
How about you mentioned the young generation is a pretty short-term goal oriented, looking for autonomy and flexibility, cyber age generation. How about if during the recruitment process, the manager might find the candidate is very, very good, with very high caliber, with very good capability, but the personality might not be fit with the organization's culture. Maybe the candidate is not a team player.
Okay.
If you were the manager, would you like to have this employee in your organization because he's very, very smart, capable, strong ability?
It goes back to the core values of your organization. Okay, so if your values, organizational culture emphasize much on teamwork, so in that case, you always look at the good team player. Okay, so even you have very smart individuals, but they work individually in forming a team. So that means you have a team of high caliber, but they don't work together. So in that case, it may go against what you want. And then you may not develop the synergy that your organization expects, and they may compete with each other, and you may create more trouble. Okay, so ultimately, I think the personal values and the fit between the personal values and organizational culture is very important.
Okay, from your point of view, which are the most important skill or characteristic an employee must possess to be successful in the organization, or even in the organization culture, or for international assignment?
International assignment. So you mean when you are assigned from the head office to overseas?
To overseas, in particular hospitality or international brand.
So what kind of skill is the most important?
What kind of skill?
First, I think, of course, you may think about language. Okay, you need, if you are being transferred to Japan, for example, you need to know Japanese.
Yes.
And the second thing is about the cultural adaptation. I think that would be more important. Okay, so before you take up the assignments, you know how's the life in Japan looks like. Okay, so what will people do after work, or what will the situation is if you work in the Japanese society. Okay, so the cultural adaptation is another thing that I think is more important than language sometimes.
Okay. You talk about work-life balance. In particular, not only the young generation require, our generation also like work-life balance, but in particular, this characteristic is much more important for the young generation. But do you think in the real life experience, do you think work-life balance exists in a workplace?
I think so. So it depends on how you arrange. Okay, especially now we have high technology, and sometimes you can take your work outside your office. Okay, so some people say if you do what we call the M work, okay, mobile work. Okay, some people say having a mobile work may create more stress or may create more conflict in your family. Okay, but in my view, I think if you have M work, that means you can do your work mobile outside your office, and then you have more control when to finish the work, when to do your work. Okay, so this kind of autonomy often can become a very important intrinsic motivation for you.
Okay, maybe before we are moving to answering online learners' question, I ask you one more question, Raymond. how can a business can encourage employee to take on an international assignment? In particular, for those employees, they have the family, they have the kids in the hometown.
Okay.
Accepting an international assignment or moving outside the hometown is a really a hard time for this type employee. How can a manager do to persuade them to accept the assignment?
Okay, so I think firstly you need to select the correct people. Okay, so you need, when you do your selection, you need to know, for example, the person you choose to have international assignment, what is the ability in cultural adaptation in terms of language, and also the family. Okay, so whether he just have a lot of young kids who need to go to school, and then if you transfer them, whether you can transfer the whole family with the family members to another country. Okay, so this is the first one. And second thing is you need to understand that person's international experience. So whether he or she has some international exposure before. Okay, and then it's about the ability for knowledge transfer. Okay, so if you choose this person to another country, you also want this person to transfer your culture to that country. Okay,
it's kind of knowledge management.
Okay, it's knowledge management. Okay, so whether this person can share, I mean, not just talking the same language, but whether he's willing to share the knowledge from the home country to the host country. Okay, so I think in doing that, of course, how to encourage the employees to take up the assignments is that you need to provide some psychological safety to the employees that, okay, for example, you need to be clearly tells them how long it takes for this assignment, what will happen after you finish this assignment. Okay, so we have a lot of research talking about cultural shock when you are transferred to another country. And there are also some research talking about the reverse cultural shock. So that means after you complete the assignment, when you come back, everything changed. Okay, so maybe you cannot work in the same department before you change your job. Okay, so what will happen? I think that kind of psychological safety you provide to the employee is also important for them to take up the international assignment.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lloyd. How about we are looking at the online learners question, okay? Let's take a look at the first question. One of the learner asked, we know there is a high turnover in the hotel industry. So how to deal with the middle management from different cultures and let them collaboration together soon? This is the question one.
Okay, so you mean there are people from different cultures?
Yes.
Okay, you need them to work together. Okay.
Yes.
So if they can work together, you may result in a high turnover. Okay. So I think first, when you want different people from different cultures, they work together. First, you need to develop is their cultural awareness. Okay. So, and I work with American, and I work with a Japanese. Okay. So what will be the difference? Or different angles, they may look at the same thing. Okay, so how an American look at salary, different from a Japanese look at salary. Okay, so this is about the cultural awareness and what kind of things they emphasize more. There may be cultural differences. So, and then the next thing is you need to make it very clear about we want to achieve as a kind of the team. Okay, so you want the team to perform, to collaborate together. Okay, so what is the ultimate goal they need to achieve? And then after they have the cultural awareness, we know there will be some differences and how to deal with those differences. Okay, so it depends on the leaders. Okay, so how they communicate clearly about the goal to each people. They come from different culture, and how he or she design a very fair system, a very consistent policy to different people from different cultures. Okay.
The similar question raised by another learner, this is question 3. He or she want to know how the positive organizational culture influence the hotel's turnover. So positive organizational culture, do you think it will increase the hotel's turnover or decrease the hotel's turnover? I think this is the learner want to know.
Okay. So I think first of all, we need to clarify what is positive organizational culture. So I think
you can use strong culture.
Okay. So a strong culture, of course, I think strong culture can make your employees commit to the organization
Identification,
and
yeah, I
attached to the
remember.
organization because they found an identity from this organization. Okay, so in that case, I think those people who share a strong organizational culture is less likely they will think about quitting the job. Yeah.
So this is the culture can influence the hotel's turnover rate.
Yeah.
So in a certain level, no matter it's positive or negative,
Yeah.
it depends on the organization's existing culture, is whether it's strong,
strong or weak.
Yeah. Okay. How about another learner's question is question 5. How to improve staff's initiative and creativity through organizational culture?
Okay.
That means staff initiative to change and creative performance through culture.
Through culture. If you rely on culture to develop creativity, so I think basically your culture need to have a very external focus,
change oriented,
and also focus on flexibility. Okay, so I remember two scholars called Quinn and Cameron. They have a competitive value framework about culture, and they use 2 dimensions, so external or internal, and flexible and stable to differentiate 4 types of organizational culture. So if you need to be innovative for your organization, so you need to have a culture with have an external focus. And also, you need to be very flexible. So this is what they name as the adhocracy culture.
Okay.
Okay, so this is especially true for those, for example, newly established company or IT company. Okay, and the leader in this kind of culture, and they just work like entrepreneur, and they also need to be very innovative. Okay, so I think if you want your whole organization to have certain level of creativity, so you need to develop a kind of culture with have external and flexible.
That means at the organizational structure need to be less strict, right?
Yeah, less strict.
Need to be decentralization.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
And I think the management practice need to be empowerment.
Yeah. Empowerment.
Empowerment and type of leaders like entrepreneurship, empowering leader, and creativity.
Yeah.
Is important.
Yeah.
To encourage the employee to be conduct creative performance.
Yeah.
Okay. And another question. Question 6, when does the organization need to change its organizational culture? I think this learner's question is some organization culture may be too old, too tradition. During certain period of time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, it is not fit with the changing environment of the external markets.
Yeah.
So if in this situation, do you think organizational culture needs to change? Or which aspect we should focus on?
So I think just like one of the questions you asked me before about the business environment keep changing. Okay, so I think if it is a very short term crisis, for example, economic downturn, and then you think that the organization can recover this kind of situation quickly. So in that case, I will not think that you need to change your organizational culture.
This is the founder's culture,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Maybe at that time, you need to reinforce the founder's culture. One element in organizational culture is the storytelling. Okay, sometimes we have the term called saga. So that is the historical event which depicts how your founder overcome difficulties, overcome challenges of your group. Okay, so you may reinforce this kind of stories to the employees to let them know that we have overcome difficulties in the past, and you can also overcome difficulties here. Okay. Of course, this happens, I mean, like some short-term crisis, or you think the economy or the society can recover shortly. But if it is a long-term change, for example, the society have some kind of value changes, and you think that change is needed. Otherwise, if we rely on the old traditional culture, we may not be competitive. So in that case, then it may be the time that the organizational leader, they need to consider to change organizational culture or modify the organizational culture. Okay, and of course, as I mentioned, we cannot do it in a very drastic way. We cannot do it in 2 months.
Okay, step by step.
So it's really step by steps, and also you need to look at the original culture and how, what extent the original culture can do to adjust, to shift, to fit into the changes. Okay, so that should be handled very carefully.
Right, because an organizational culture take thousands of years, or
Yeah.
maybe take many years
Yeah.
to form.
Yeah.
And it is not easy to change it because there are some scenario or crisis happened.
Yeah.
So if the organization or if the leader can take this opportunity, can twist the environment and use the existing culture to reinforce it, and then to solve the problem, it might help the organizations to change the performance.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, another question. The question 9, how to make the workplace more spiritual from the organizational culture. What is the meaning of spiritual? I mean, I heard there is a spiritual leadership that means more ethical. The leaders more ethical, focus on everything is on the business ethic. I don't know whether this learner want to focus on the business ethic, or you can focus on 2 aspects. One is business ethic. Another one, you can focus on how to motivate the employee be more motivated through organizational culture.
Okay.
We can understand through this aspect, I think.
Okay. So I think if you talk about motivation, okay, then you need to firstly know what your organizational culture can provide, or what your organizational culture shape the behaviors. So what is the expectation of the organization? Okay, first place. So, and another thing is, what does the employee want? Okay, so as I mentioned, we can take motivation from extrinsic and intrinsic, and we always look at intrinsic motivation more importantly than extrinsic motivation. So in that case, I think the organizational culture, because it is something that influence the way we live in organizational and in organization, and also the way we behave. Okay, so I think in that case, it's somewhat behavioral rather than a kind of extrinsic reward you get from the organization. Okay, so in terms of that intrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivators like emotional support, or fairness, or some obligation you work, or psychological contract you have with the employees, okay, will be very important.
I heard that you divide the reward into intrinsic and extrinsic, right? Can we say that for those junior, general, or frontline staff,
okay,
they are much more likely focus on extrinsic reward, but for them go through the management hierarchy, for the middle level manager or even the GM, I think extrinsic reward in this situation will be much more important through the organizational hierarchy. Do you think this is the general situation?
Now, for me, I think, of course, people may look at extrinsic reward and intrinsic reward differently.
Yes.
Okay, so some people may always tell you, oh, I want to have a higher salary. Okay.
Yeah, it's very basic.
Yeah, it's very basic. So if you go to a very basic level, for example, the salary of the junior staff is just enough for them to survive or to keep a certain lifestyle.
Yes.
Okay. So in that case, they may look at extrinsic reward more. Okay. But if you are already in the senior management and you already get some organizational experience in this organization, you stay in the organization for quite some years, and your expectation may not just look at the extrinsic reward.
Yes.
Okay. Especially research also shows that when you go up to the organization hierarchy, so extrinsic reward is not the things that will make you job satisfied.
Yes.
Okay. So usually the senior managers or middle management, they derive job satisfaction from intrinsic things rather than extrinsic thing.
Okay.
So in that case, I think senior staff or senior management, they may look at intrinsic reward more importantly. Okay.
That's very interesting. Another one is question 12. Is flag management more conducive to the implementation and improvement of organizational culture? These learners talk about flag structure or tall structure in the organization.
Okay, the hierarchy.
Hierarchy. Is it even conducive or benefits to the implementation of the improvement of organizational culture in terms of the flat structure?
I think so. So if you have a flat organizational structure, so that means you don't need to transmit the values of the founders or the managers or senior management top down to many levels.
Okay.
So in that case, because we know that when you communicate from top to down, for every level, there may be some noise or distortion. Okay,
right,
so in that case, if you have many layers, if you go to a very lower level, and in that case, your value may, to a certain extent, have some distortion or some alternation. Okay,
Yes.
so in that case, that may not be easy when compared with a flat organizational structure. Okay, so for a flat organizational structure, you may just have 2 or 3 layers, and all the people, you can also organize the head of the departments or your employees to have a meeting or retreat activities to transfer the organizational culture. Okay, so I think it is easier if you really want to compare a tall organization structure and a flat organizational structure.
Thank you. And another interesting question is question 13. One of the learners asked is if there is a mismatch between an employee and organizational culture value, what are the impacts? This is talk about the job culture unfit. What is the impact?
So if person organization fit cannot happen.
Yes.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay. So the impact to the organization, of course, is that the employee may not be able to perform. Okay, because he may be troubled by the mismatch, and he may emphasize something, and finally the organization does not emphasize this kind of things. Okay, so ultimately it will influence the organizational performance and also the effectiveness for meeting the goal. So in the individual level, then of course finally it may comes to attrition. So that because of the mismatch, the individual may leave the organization finally.
Yes. This is obviously in the long run.
Yeah.
If the job and organizational unfit between the organization and employee, the outcome will be turnover.
Turnover. Yeah.
Or layoff.
Yes.
This is the very basic impact. Maybe we have one more. We can answer one more question. Question number 15. Nowadays, more and more people getting older. We are an aging society, such as in Hong Kong or in many other countries as well. More people getting older and have to work longer in their life. Shouldn't we not focus on them as well? That means, can we use the organizational culture or maybe to twist the organizational culture to tailor-make for the aging workforce? Do you think? Is there any needs to think about this issue?
Now, I have another aspect to look at this question. If there is these people, I assume that they work in the same organization longer. Okay, so if they work in the same organization longer, they may have already adapted to that organizational culture already. Okay, so in that case, I think they are the easier when we compare with new employees. In terms of cultural aspect.
Older employee work well with the young generation in one organization.
Okay, so I think firstly you need to focus on what the older employee can contribute. Okay, so usually they may not adapt to the new technology, but they have experience and skill in another aspect.
Yes.
Okay, so mutual respect is the thing you may need to emphasize. Okay, so the old employees must respect the new ideas suggested by the young employees, and the young employees must also respect what kind of contribution the old employees can make.
Yes.
Okay, so I think you need to develop this kind of mutual respect climate so that people will learn with each other.
Usually, the senior employee or older employee, they can be the mentor, right?
Yeah.
They can share a lot of explicit and implicit knowledge.
Yes.
With the new generation, and those experience is very valuable for the organization.
Yes.
So in particular for the young generation, they have a lot of new technology about IT.
Yeah.
And then these information can also share with the senior level employee or like, the aging employee.
Just like I'm teaching my mother to use the iPhone now.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Your mother like it?
Difficult, but partly absorbing it.
Partly absorbing. Okay. And okay, thank you very much, Professor Loy.
Okay,
And
thank you,
today,
Alice.
the conversation is for here. This live section is almost approaching to the end. For this live section, organizational culture plays an important role not only to influence individual employees' behavior, and it also influences the business strategies of an organization. I hope this live section will generate more discussion about how organizational culture can influence the role of the hotel managers and employees' performance. Thank you for staying with us. See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.